Well, good Friday morning to everyone, and welcome to the John Kentera Show on YouTube. We're back at it. We got a lot to cover today. We got a really special guest, one of my favorite guys that I've been around for 30 years, and he just called it a career, and what a career it was. We're going to get to him momentarily, but we got a lot to cover today regarding our San Diego Padres. We're going to talk about Fernando Tatis. I told you a month ago, you can't trade Machado, you can't trade Bogarts. Their contracts are untradeable where they're at in their careers. But Fernando's is tradable, and now people nationally are starting to talk about it. And I'm not saying trade Fernando, but I'm going to get into that. We're going to talk about the Padres re-signing an all-star catcher from a couple of years ago, Elias Diaz, and we're going to get into Michael King and Dylan Cease and Ha-Seong Kim. And, of course, they got big FanFest coming up on Saturday. But we're going to get to our guest here in just a second. But want to remind everyone, please subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost a dime. We're doing great with subscribers. Like the show if you like it, and make sure you write your comments. Especially as we get into spring training, into the regular season, we're going to have a lot of viewers. And I love to get those comments from you Padre fans out there, baseball fans, sports fans in general. So if you would, please like the program and, again, subscribe. You can follow me on Facebook at John Kentera, and you can follow me on X at Coach Kentera 44. Without any further ado, I want to get right into our guest because we're going to really have some fun today talking with this gentleman. His name is Bernie Wilson. I think a lot of you folks in San Diego knew who he is. He's been working with the Associated Press since 1984. And he came to San Diego to cover San Diego sports. And he did other things. I mean, he'd go to LA, he'd go to the Olympics, he'd cover America's Cup. I mean, very well-rounded writer and a well-rounded sportsman as well. But he came to San Diego in 1991. I met him in 1994 when I was covering the Chargers. And it was during training camp. I met him out on the fields at UCSD. When practice was over, everybody gathered around Bobby Ross, and there's Bernie Wilson. I met Bernie. We used to walk over and have a little lunch from time to time where the Chargers ate, and a little bit different back in those days than it is now, but a gentleman that has a wealth of history of covering some of the major sports in our country, and we were very lucky to have him in San Diego for just right about 30 years, just maybe a little bit over. He retired on January 3rd. He actually made his retirement announcement at the holiday happy hour that we have every year up at the Leucadian, and caught me and Jay Paris, a lot of other guys by surprise. But without any further ado, our good friend Bernie Wilson, formerly of the Associated Press, joins us here on the John Kentera Show. And Bernie, you look well, my friend.
Thanks, Coach. I've been working out, trying to stay healthy. Just signed up for Medicare Part B, and you don't want to have escalating medical costs when you retire. So I'm doing what I can.
Bernie, let me ask you this. I mean, you shut it down. Your last day was January 3rd. Tell us how that came about. I mean, were you thinking about going through another baseball season? I mean, how did you make the decision to call it a career?
Well, I was thinking about going through one more baseball season, maybe two. But in mid-November, the AP offered 120 people a buyout package because they wanted to reduce their workforce by 8%, which is fairly significant. But it's AP had been in better shape than most for years. And financially it lined up with the various severance packages, and I'm swinging on, like I said, I'm swinging on to Medicare as of, Saturday. And nobody better mess with that, if you know what I mean, bro. We senior citizens take that stuff seriously. They're called entitlements for a reason, because we're entitled to them. So I'm looking forward to enjoying my entitlements. But anyway, they wanted to cut 8% of the workforce, and it lined up, and it was not worth sticking around for another baseball season, because it's fun being at Petco Park, but it's not fun covering baseball anymore, because I think you and I agree the game has changed. The atmosphere is sensory overload. They play music way too loud. Now, I may do some freelancing for AP. covering some Padre games, but it certainly wasn't worth sticking around another year when there were some pretty good enticements to take the buyout. So I took it and ran.
Bernie, let's talk a little bit about covering the Padres, but I want to right off because people are wanting to know what are your feelings on what's going on right now with this ownership. She said, he said, and you got the Seidlers going against the widow or Peter Seidler. I mean, what can you make of this, and where do you think it's going to lead?
A couple of thoughts, Coach. My last day with AP, in baseball reference terms, I spent 40 years, 297 days with AP. Okay, that was Friday, January 3rd. On Monday, January 6th, I woke up, I don't know, 10 o'clock. I'm leading that entitled life now. I check, my email had been cut off, there's no better feeling in life than having a work email cut off permanently. You don't have to check it, but I was looking at my personal email, then I checked the various social media sites, a few of them which have turned into cesspools. And I saw the story about the lawsuit, and I was thinking, this is awesome. I don't have to do anything on it. It's up to some poor other sucker to do. As I can't remember, the English band has a song with a line in it. It's not my problem. I think it's Blur, song 2 or something like that. But yeah, it's not my problem. So, and I've read up as much as I can. A little bit ago, I finally read one of the recent stories, and you nailed it. It sounds like a he said, she said, which, by the way, is a great Beatles song on Rubber Soul, which was this might as well be the old guys show, right, on Rubber Soul, which was the first record album I bought. But it does read like a he said, she said, and I would think this thing can't get to court quick enough so that, I have no idea how it's going to play out even in court, but people, I guess, need to see these documents that purport these various things. And, it's I have no idea how speedy the process will be. It sure doesn't sound like they're going to settle. But I guess the sooner that each side can prove its contention or have them disproved by the other side is going to, help. I think the court of public opinion is with Scheel Seidler, Peter's widow, whereas the Seidler brothers, the bros, are drawing a lot of derision, especially since the Padres have been pretty much DOA on signing players this offseason other than Diaz. They're losing players left and right and not adding, and they're talking about trading people, including Cease and possibly King, possibly Arise. It's a mess. And I think it's probably too late to salvage this season. It certainly seemed to be too late to salvage anything regarding Sasaki. I think he was destined to go to the Dodgers anyway, but it sure sounds like this ownership mess helped him make up his mind. And, the fans really don't seem amused. And again, this is the same fan base that Peter Seidler was trying to win a world championship for. Last year they played under the win one for Peter. And I think that whole feeling is gone now. I don't sense any sentimentality. Maybe among some fans. I'm not a fan, but and I hate to say it's amusing watching, but it's interesting just how this franchise always stumbles over something self-inflicted. As our late great friend Tony Gwynn was fond of saying, hey, we're the Pods, meaning they always find some way to screw stuff up. And the timing of this couldn't have been worse. I don't know. There's speculation that maybe it'll lead to the team being sold, and that's not good. But you and I have been around long enough to know that oftentimes family ownership, while it can be good, at least in the sense that it was when Peter Seidler was alive, can become very toxic when various family members are fighting for control or for a cut of the profits or a cut of the action. It just seems to have, plunged the franchise into darkness.
Bernie, I want to ask you about articles that are being written now, and there have been a ton of articles, and of course, the Union Tribune is covering this morning, noon, and night because they're looking for content as well. Because San Diego isn't exactly booming with major franchises. I'm reading a lot about San Diego FC and the San Diego Wave, but the story in Padres is obviously a front page story. Some days even maybe on the front page on A1 rather than back on the front page of the sports section. My question to you, the other day, I'm reading the article and there was talk about how all these people were talking. Some were talking about the Seidler, some were talking about Shield Seidler, and they said there was almost like 20 people, but they were all anonymous. And I guess my question, he also went on in the article and said that some of the people that talked that were anonymous were no longer members of the Padre organization. I want to ask you from a journalistic standpoint in the Associated Press, were you allowed to use anonymous quotes?
Absolutely not. We can use anonymous. We could, or I could when I was employed by the AP, but I guess I'm still emotionally attached to the mothership. AP has very hard and fast rules about using anonymous sources. The first rule is try to get them to talk on the record. And if they won't, ask them why they won't. And then if they still won't talk on the record, you have to make it very clear that you can use facts from them off the record as anonymous sources, but you cannot use quotes. No chance. And the reasoning is if you want to get quoted, if you feel so strongly about your position, then put your name on it. And that's across the board, whether it's an agent, sliding something to a writer about, Joe Blow signing a contract. Like I've had agents in the past give you the information on background, but then wanting to give a quote on the record. And it's like, no, you can't do it that way. You can give me the information on the terms of the contract, but I cannot then quote you on how your client is the greatest athlete to ever play the game. It doesn't work that way. And, kudos to the AP for sticking to it. And, I think I did read that story and, obviously a lot of work went into it, but, AP would absolutely not allow any quotes from an anonymous source. Again, the thinking being, if you really feel so strongly about your position, then put your name to it. Don't be a coward. Put your name to it. I don't care if there's pending litigation. Put your name to it. As the late great Mojo Nixon would say, buck up and quit your whining. It's just remarkable that, and this goes back 2 years ago to, the stories from two different publications about the lack of leadership in the clubhouse. Everybody's pointing their fingers at Machado, but being too cowardly to put their name on it. And the other one was the dysfunction in the organization, which was basically, casting, guilt to AJ Preller, or signing guilt to AJ Preller for what was going on. And again, people were allowed to speak on condition of anonymity, and it doesn't work. It's the public already has so much distrust for the press that when you toss out anonymous sources being allowed to be quoted, it gets even worse. And I'll be honest with you, Manny and I never really warmed up to each other, which is fine. It is what it is. He's like that with a lot of people. He did get better last year, but it just seemed unfair that all these other people were allowed to throw him under the bus anonymously, yet he was then expected to speak on the record. I mean, it doesn't, it's unfair. And that's why, back in my days of dealing with agents and executives, the minute they said it's usually, this is off the record, right? And it's like, well, yeah, but why can't you be on the record? In fact, the night before Norval Eugene Turner was fired by the Chargers, I passed Dean Spanos walking out of the locker room, and I said, "Is you going to fire Norv?" And he says, "Off the record?" And I said, "No, Dean, on the record. What's wrong with telling me the truth?" And he goes, "I'll see you tomorrow." It's like, sure thing, Dino. Polish those Super Bowl rings, bro. They're looking good. And that might have been a little hasty, but that's how I operated as an AP employee. Why should we give these guys cover of anonymity? Say your piece.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that, because this is a hot button story here in San Diego, and it's not going away. I want to ask you one more, and I want to get into your career and the athletes and the coaches and the general managers and the people you covered, and what, some of the guys you enjoyed covering, maybe a few that you didn't enjoy covering. But I want to ask you about whether it be FanFest tomorrow. Okay. And we're going to talk about FanFest a little bit later on in the program, but FanFest tomorrow, and you're going to have some of the named players there. And if not tomorrow, the first day of spring training, when they can get to Manny Machado or Xander Bogaerts, I got to believe the media, even though the Padres will try to, Heisman them off from the players, I got to believe the media is going to be asking Manny, what are your thoughts about what's going on with the ownership?
I would hope so. Great phrase, by the way, Heismaning them off. That's awesome. But the players will be coached up. Not to say anything. The one thing where the Padres have failed this fan base miserably is by not at least talking about payroll expectations and why they're doing what they're doing, or in their case, not doing. They owe this fan base that sells out their ballpark night after night and buys those $18 beers and $24 nachos. Aren't the Cardiff crack nachos $24 or something crazy like that?
Well, they're not cheap. I know that, but they're awful good too.
Oh, they are. But so's my local Ponchos up the hill here in Fletcher Hills. And you can get 2 entrees for $24 there. But the point is, they're printing money down there night after night, even though it's a cashless venue. They're raking it in. Now, granted, their TV deal, lack of one has hurt them, but I do think they owe it, whether it's one of the Seidler brothers, Katsenda, whoever, Eric Grupner, sit down and answer questions about what they're doing, or again, why they're not doing anything. Explain it, because I will say this fan base, there are some in it who get very annoying, but there's a lot of people in this fan base who are good fans. They're smart fans, and they want to know what's going on. They pay attention to more than just, batting averages and WAR and all this other stuff that swirls around baseball. And tell them they really should explain what their strategy is. If they want to punt this year, just come out and say it. We're punting this year. We'll be back next year, hopefully. Meanwhile, the Dodgers, the Dodgers can be beaten in a playoff series, but on the other hand, this Padres team showed that it can disappear for 24 innings and end their season on a whimper. So, they need a really good crisis PR person. I'm guessing that the equity bros have one, but the franchise itself, man, and not Mark Fabiani, please. Although Fabiani at least issues statements and would return
He
phone
made a
calls.
lot of money, really doing not a whole lot.
He made tens of millions off of Spanos, and I think part of that was probably he kept punting stuff down the road because he liked those paychecks. Somebody told me once he was pulling in $750K a month.
Wow.
From Spanos. Yeah, it's pretty good coin.
I only need one or two of those a month, and I'd be on the other end of this podcast being interviewed by somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Bernie, let's talk a little bit. Let's have some fun here. Let's talk about covering players. And, obviously, Tony Gwynn's got to be right there at the top, I would imagine, as far as San Diego's concerned. But give me your top 3, 4, 5 athletes that you really enjoyed. When you walked into the locker room, you knew you were going to probably get heckled a little bit, have some fun with, and who you could go to and really trust and became almost friends with.
Well, okay, first of all, Tony Gwynn was one. Wayne Gretzky was another. I lucked into being in L.A. and covered his first 3 years with the Kings. But as far as locally, T. Gwynn could not have been better to deal with. He would get, pardon the phrase, and he would often bring this up himself, red ass.
Right.
Hey, Tony, you want to talk? No, why not? Because I got the red ass. That's why. But then 5 minutes later, you'd be sitting with him and he'd be laughing that horse laugh. And
sometimes it may have been 20 minutes, though.
Yeah, that's true. A cooling off period. But, Tony Gwynn, Phillip Rivers, LaDainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates, the true friends of the media were the offensive linemen, like Nick Hardwick, Chris Dealman, those guys, because they're the grunts. They're the actual, the salt of the earth kind of guys who do the dirty work and often get overlooked, underappreciated. I mean, like Hardwick, we'd talk anything but football with him. And one year, I think it was 06, he out of the blue, he asked me if I had any extra Pearl Jam tickets because Pearl Jam was playing at Viejas Arena. I said, yeah, I got 2 extras because somehow I ended up with 6. And that's hard to do with Pearl Jam. You're lucky to get 2, but I had 6. So I sold him 2 at face value and sat next to him and his awesome wife, who had been a soccer coach, I believe, at San Diego State, assistant coach or something. And that's just the kind of guy he was. I wasn't going to, sell him, try to make money off him. I sold him 2 tickets at face value. Dealman is another guy. I saw he became friends with some of the Padres. So I'd see him around Petco Park and we'd joke around. We have a funny David Wells related joke that I probably shouldn't repeat on this family podcast, but they're just good guys. And in fact, one time the year they went 8-8 and won the division, they were 4-8 at one point, if you remember. And around that time, I was over talking to Hardwick, and he goes, "Hey, Bernie, I don't think I've ever read one of your stories." And I said, "Well, Nick, that's probably a good thing." And I told him, I wrote you guys off weeks ago. And Dealman heard that sitting across the room. And Dealman was a big man who could be very nasty, mostly on the field. But he turned and said, "Bernie, get out of here." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Get out of this locker room." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you said you wrote us off." And I said, "Well, was I wrong? You guys were 4-8 and going nowhere." And he calmed down, but that was just the competitor in him. But I thought it was funny that Nick said that. I don't think I've ever read one of your stories, so at least I was honest with him. But those guys, you could wander over and talk anything but football, and I think they appreciated that.
How about I throw out a couple of names at you here off the top? Trevor Hoffman.
Great guy, great, again, great human being as well as a Hall of Fame player. And when he was playing, about the only times we ever quoted him were after he blew saves. He was that consistent. I mean, we do features on him here and there, and as he was passing all these milestones on his way to the Hall of Fame or Hall of Fame caliber career, and the only time you really needed him, and he knew this, was after he blew a save because it happened so rarely. And sometimes they were dramatic. sort of a soul crushing blown save. And he would come out of the training room and talk. Other times he just, you wouldn't see him, but he would come out and talk after blowing a save. Just like I want to toss in a shout out to David Wells. As gruff as he could be, he could be very gruff. He understood the media had a job. And that one game he got ejected and he threw his glove into the stands as he was walking off the field.
Threw the ball off the net.
Yeah, and his wife was ticked because she wanted that glove for one of their sons. And then he got he got fined for it, and he posted a copy of the letter he sent to the commissioner on the clubhouse wall, and we all wrote about it, and he got into even more trouble, but he didn't care. The modern day, this is any team, would have, shut down the clubhouse if that had happened. But Boomer, that was Boomer, OB to the core. And but in one game he just got rocked and was out by the third or fifth inning, one of the two. But when we got into the clubhouse after the game, he was sitting there in his civvies with one of his sons waiting to talk to us. 99% of any other player in that situation would have showered and gone home, which is their right. But Boomer knew that we would want to talk to him. And there he was. And he goes, come on, guys, let's get this over with. But the fact is, he was there. He was accessible, answered every question. And, he went on with his day, and we went on to write our award-winning dispatches.
Who were your favorite general managers to deal with in your tenure in San Diego?
Kevin Towers has to be number one. Bobby Beathard, number two. Oh, and when you were GM of the Sockers.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. See, I remembered that.
Good. We set an all-time record, 48 wins in a row.
Shit, that's awesome, man. Hang a banner.
I got 3 rings out of it, so that's kind of nice.
That's good. 3 more than the Chargers ever got, right?
Absolutely. Talk a little bit about Kevin Towers, because, I've known him since he was 17 years old when he moved from Medford, Oregon. But from your standpoint, talk about Kevin and the way he did things compared to the way a lot of general managers do things now.
Well, it's funny that of all the things Jeff Morad did, probably the one good thing was he nicknamed KT, or he called KT a gunslinger. And KT, after he got fired by Jeffrey Morad, made that his email. It was like KT gunslinger at whatever his service was. And he was just a good guy. He was as down to earth as possible, made it to AAA, and then he blew out his elbow and, worked his way into being a GM. And he was honest as the day was long. If you asked him a question, he always said, I'm going to answer you guys. I'm not going to lie to you. And he would help us with salary figures, with, the length of contracts. He would give a yay or nay when you said, hey, are you talking with so-and-so about, was such and such team about so-and-so? And he goes, yeah, we are. And you could negotiate with him whether it was on or off the record. He was easy. And there was only one time in his tenure here, he knew the scope of the AP, that if I wrote something, it would be, not to break our arms, patting ourselves on the back, around the world in a flash. They were dickering with the Yankees in some trade deal, and it was sensitive. And I called him and I asked if he could confirm it. And he said, Bern, I'm sorry. This one time I got to say no. I can't help you because it's with the Yankees. They're not going to say anything. And if you end up with it, they're going to know it came from me, and I just can't do it. And I said, I respect that. Why would I push him and get him in trouble? Because, he became a friend as well as, a GM. You generally try to keep your professional and personal things separate, but he was such a good guy, and that I think he became friends with all of us in the media, and mainly again because he was open, he was honest, he was funny,
and he was available.
Yeah, exactly. And if all you had to do was go find Bochy pregame, and Towers would be sitting in Bochy's office, or they'd be at Bullies East, when the Pods were still at Qualcomm, or Jack Murphy / Qualcomm.
They'd be up at Bullies on the Hill there.
Oh yeah, exactly. And Bullies is still there. It's where the baseball writers have their luncheon every year. But no, he was just such a good guy. And in Peoria, I think in spring training, I think he stayed over in Scottsdale. I dropped by his rental house one time in Scottsdale because, we only got to go to spring training for about 5 days or so because AP didn't like spending money. But I dropped by his house one day just to have a few beers. He had gotten a new supply of some kind of different beer, and he said, "Come on by." I said, "Sure, why not?" And he came. Jay Paris and some other people used to have a Charger tailgate that Rod Laver, the tennis legend, would go to, and KT loved Rod Laver, and so I picked KT up one morning over at Dave and Buster's. He didn't have a parking pass. I had, a parking pass, obviously, for the Chargers.
He couldn't afford to. He couldn't afford to pay.
He couldn't afford to pay, making his $2 million or whatever. But the bottom line is, he's a bro, and you do, it's not about the 15. Well, you don't want to give Spanos $15 if you can avoid it. So I picked him up, and we went over, and he did have a game ticket, and he went to the tailgate, got to hang out with Rod Laver. And if you've never seen
Rod Laver's a great guy.
He's the greatest superstar I've ever met. The nicest, most humblest man. And if you've never seen,
unassuming.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, thousands of fans over the years would walk by that tailgate having no idea that one of the greatest tennis players of all time was over there. And you haven't lived if you haven't seen Rod Laver double fist Pacificos. I mean, he's an Australian, and I think his saying is, we're a beer drinking nation, mate. I mean, he has lived life to the fullest.
He still enjoys coming down. He was out of town this year, but he normally comes to our holiday happy hour.
He was there 2 years ago. Yeah. No, I mean, it was just, I did a story when I first met him, just on, this was in the late 1990s or early 2000s, just on the fact that he could go to these tailgates. Thousands of people would be streaming past him, have no idea who he was. But there was one exhibition game. He wanted something from a concession stand, and it was time to go in for the game anyway. And me and Jay Paris were standing with him, and he was recognized. And this one guy, probably in his late 20s, early 30s, did a double take when Rod was standing in line, and he goes, "Are you Rod Laver?" The Rod Laver? And Rod, of course, humbly said yes. And the guy said, "Can I shake your hand?" And of course he could shake. And the guy was just dumbfounded to see Rod Laver, the legendary Rod, the Rocket Rod Laver, standing in a concession line up on the third level of Qualcomm Stadium before a Charger exhibition game.
I remember 2 years ago when Fred Lynn was there
at
the holiday happy hour, and Rod Laver was there. Rod was sitting on a bar stool, and Fred was demonstrating to somebody the proper stance and everything. I mean, talk about a great picture. It was unbelievable. You got Rod Laver watching Fred Lynn give a hitting lesson at the Leucadian.
Yeah, and I remember there was a birthday party. I can't remember whose it was, but somebody up in North County, somebody with a nice house, threw this party, and Laver was there, and Freddie Lynn and some other people, and we gathered for a group photo because I've gotten to know Freddie as well. And I was wearing a UCLA shirt because our son Mike was at UCLA, and I was standing next to Lynn, and he goes, "I don't want you standing next to me." I said, "Why?" "Because you're wearing a UCLA shirt," because he, of course, went to USC. And I said, "Bro, my wife went to USC. If that beside," and then I said, "I'm bigger than you are," and I put my arm around him, and we posed for the photo. I mean, these guys are they're great human beings.
Yeah, they are.
They're fantastic. They were fantastic athletes, but they're even better human beings. And I've seen Freddie a couple times since then, and he's just fun to talk with.
Hey, Bernie, I got to tell you something. Then I want to get to coaches you've covered. Now I want to get your top highlights of your career. We got about 7 or 8 minutes left here. When I was 16 years old, Fred Lynn, 1975, He had that big year with Boston where he was the MVP and Rookie of the Year. His dad worked for my dad at the Cardiff office in Cardiff
Nice.
bar. And so Mr. Lynn goes, well, let's take Johnny up to meet Fred. So I get to go up and watch. He's the biggest name in baseball that year. And we get to go watch the Red Sox play. Then we went over to the Grand Hotel in Anaheim, and I got to have dinner with him after the game. And I remember Cecil Cooper, Juan Beniquez, all these guys were walking around. You know, I'm like a junior in high school at this time. So that was an unbelievable night. Then the following, like late January, they had an alumni game where all these big league guys played up at Dado Field, and Rod Dado was still coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred comes over to the screen and tells his dad, "Hey, get Johnny. I want to take him down on the field to introduce him to Rod Dado." I get to go down on the field. And of course, Rod Dado called everybody Tiger. And so I go down, "Hey, Coach Dado, it's really nice to meet you. Hey, Tiger, where do you go to school?" And told him I went to Torrey Pines and all that. But yeah, my association with Fred Lynn goes back to his rookie year in 1975. And let me tell you, when I went back to school the next day and I told people that I had dinner with Fred Lynn, they were just like in awe because he was baseball in 1975.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about coaches and managers you've covered. Who are your top three?
Bruce Bochy in a landslide. He was, again, just such a good guy. And again, with Boch, he trusted us. We had an understanding. When he said something that might be, you know, whatever, get him in trouble or something, we'd sort of look at him and he'd, you know, he earned, you know, being handled the right way in the press. But many times he, you know, he wasn't afraid of speaking on the record. The funny boat story, when they hired Towers as GM, I called, this is in the early years of cell phones, and I got a hold of Boch while he was driving back from spring training. I needed one more source. We needed two at the time. I needed one more to confirm that they were promoting KT. And Boch says, "I'm sorry, I can't, man. I just can't." And I said, "You sure?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm sorry." And he called me back a few hours later and said he couldn't because he was driving back with Charles Steinberg, who was one of the Padres
right-hand man of Larry Lucchino.
Yeah, Lucchino's right-hand man. And Lucchino had a very deep love-hate relationship with the press, especially me. I loved going toe-to-toe with Larry, you know, an Idaho Rube, me versus the button-down Ivy League guy, Lucchino. But Boat said, with Charles there, I just couldn't do it. And I'm sorry. He apologized, and by then I think I'd gotten it confirmed. But he was just so apologetic that, yeah, the rabbit-eared right-hand man of Larry Lucchino was in the car with him. So
okay, so Boch is number one. I'm not surprised by that. Give me two more.
Buddy Black. I mean, you can talk anything with Buddy Black. You know, his dad played club hockey at USC. You could talk 70s rock and roll. You could talk baseball. You could talk beer. He always has Lagunitas IPAs in the visiting clubhouse when he's in town with the Rockies. And I told him at the holiday happy hour before I announced my retirement with a picture.
Hey, he was there again this year.
Oh, yeah, he's always there.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, you know, buddy, this year sometime I'm coming down there and I'm staying and I'm going to drink a beer, Lagunitas IPA with you. And he said, "No problem. Let's do it." So, and then you need a third.
Yeah, give me a third.
I'm going to say a tie. Is a tie allowed?
Yeah, it's your list.
Okay, I'm going to say a tie with Marty Schottenheimer and Mike Riley of the Chargers. Mike Riley, nicest guy ever, way too nice to be an NFL head coach. I mean, he got worked over big time by the Chargers with a bad roster. It was just a bad time, but at least he got to say he was an NFL head coach. And Schottenheimer, you know, when he first came in, he was the ball coach, the old school Marty Schottenheimer, blah, blah, blah. But once he was on the outs with A.J. Smith, he wisely chummed up to the media members who weren't in A.J. Smith's back pocket. And he was awesome. He was funny. We could go toe to toe with him, but he could come right back, whether it was a zinger or in a press conference just off to the side. But he loved banter, as he called it, banter with the media. So many times everybody they go after the news conference, coach has to go. There's no time for one-on-ones. Coach has to go. It's like, really? Coach has 12 assistants now and 20 guys breaking down film and 18 quality control guys, and you're saying coach can't answer. But Marty would stay until the last question had been asked post, a lot of times you want to save stuff for after the news conference, and Marty loved it. And he would stay as long as until the last question had been asked. And it was awesome, just completely awesome. It's sad that
I thought he was pretty good. I enjoyed Marty Schottenheimer.
Yeah, no, his death affected me very hard because it takes a while to build a relationship with the guy. And then you realize it's hard to win 200 games in the NFL, let alone one, as they say. And the Chargers fired him after a 14-2 year. Now, granted,
he was great. Remember those couple of times where we got invited to dinner? I forget the restaurant we went to. Another time we went down to the La Jolla Beach and Tennis Club.
Both times.
And Marty was great.
Oh, he was awesome. Again, he loved the banter. There was one time he came through the locker room after practice, and the scribes were milling about waiting for somebody. And I don't know how we got on this topic, but, he grew up in Philadelphia. And he goes, I can name the starting lineup for the 1960 Pittsburgh Pirates, the Bill Mazeroski World Series Pirates.
Yeah.
And he stood there and was naming off names. And he goes, did he bat fourth or fifth? And okay. And he went through and came up with 9. He goes, is that it? Is that 9? I said, I don't know. Marty, I was 2 years old at the time.
Oh,
but that's
great.
the kind of, you can't do that anymore. They want nothing to do with the media. But
but we're also we can't even get to a lot of those guys like we used to. I mean, you don't even see them in the hallways anymore. The media, the media teams keep you away. They don't want you talking to players or to coaches, let alone assistant coaches.
Exactly. And when he died, it was like, man, that's the last of the great ones. That was an absolute brutal day. So.
Bernie, let's talk here. We got a couple minutes left. I want to get to give me your top 2 or 3. I mean, you've covered Olympics. I know America's Cup was always a big fan favorite of yours. But give me, from your words, what are your top 3 if you were putting them in order?
I'd say getting to hoist the America's Cup. It was what was it, February 14th, 2010 in Valencia, Spain, Larry Ellison's syndicate. Oracle Team USA beat the Swiss it was called the D to Gift match. It was a one-off forced by a court fight. And our good friend here in town, Captain Troy Sears, who runs Next Level Sailing, was driving a chase boat for Oracle. Both they trained in San Diego for 10 months before going to Valencia, and he was over in Valencia. And I wrote my stories that day after they won it, and they had a media party down on the ground floor of the base. And Troy calls me and said, "Get upstairs, come up this back way. I got a wristband for you." I said, "Great." That's where the good booze was, the Moet and whatnot, because rich people don't drink cheap booze. So I get to the door, get my wristband, and he goes, "Go over in line and get your picture taken with the America's Cup." I said, I can't do that, Troy. I'm not on the team. I really don't want to. And he goes, "Do it. If you don't, you'll regret it." And so I went over, waited. There were only 2 or 3 people ahead of me, grabbed it, held it up like this, like, I was Dennis Conner or Ted Turner. And it was, boom, 5 seconds or less. It's heavy, 30, 35 pounds. Set it down. I've got the picture. It's on my LinkedIn page if you want to see the picture, Coach. And not long after that, party got a little rowdy because sailors like to drink and party, especially after they win the America's Cup. And so Ellison had a beefy former grinder Wisket onto his 451-foot luxury yacht that was moored just outside. So that's number one. Number two is after Dennis Gibson deflected the pass, it was Neil O'Donnell, right?
Yeah.
To close out. Well, there were still a few seconds left, but by the time we were up in the auxiliary press box at Three Rivers Stadium, by the time we walked all the way around and down and to get onto the field to talk to guys after the game, the Steelers were marching down the field, boom, completed pass, boom, boom, first down. And by the time we got down there, it was 4th and goal. And we were standing right behind that end zone. And then Gibson deflected the pass. I have never heard a stadium go from 60 to 0 that quick. Just it went from roaring Pittsburgh fans. I mean, that town was cocky. Everybody.
Oh yeah, they were.
Oh my God, they were cocky. But it went from a million decibels to nothing. That place just went dead silent. And then what really stood out, I think the Chargers had to take one or two kneel downs, and the ferocity of the Steelers defenders trying to get the ball back. Normally it's kneel down, they touch each other and kumbaya, game over. The Steelers were pounding into the Charger line, desperate to get the ball back. But things like that stick with you. And it's hard to even come up with a number three. I think number three, I'll just say meeting a whole bunch of great people. Rod Laver, Bill Walton, rest his soul. Hacksaw, of course. It's more than just games. It's people and relations. Trevor Hoffman. I mean, going back to Hoffy, sadly, San Diego has very few major stars left. Tony's gone, Junior's gone, Kevin's gone, Kevin Towers. And whenever we needed a quote from a genuine superstar, I had three go-tos: Trevor Hoffman, Bill Walton, and Dan Fouts. They always answer the phone. They're honest. They've seen it. They've done it. And so throw Fouts and Walton and getting to know those guys. Sadly, Bill went way too soon. But, you develop relations. I never covered Fouts, but, he would take my call all the time. And he understood that, AP, if he needed a comment on something San Diego related and Chargers related, he was the guy. The last time I talked to him was when I did a retrospective as they were tearing down Qualcomm, and he had some fabulous things to say about. He loved, well, back then it was the Murph, but he was saying he bought some seats from the Murph at one point. He has them in two different places on his property in Oregon, and things like that. That you meet some real genuine people who did not get blinded by their superstardom. I love the fact that when you see Trevor Hoffman, he's usually wearing jeans and flip-flops, even if it's for sort of a formal thing, a pregame ceremony. Here he comes out in his jeans and flip-flops because he's a dude. He's a bro. He's a San Diego bro. And, it's awesome. So I'll say
I think a lot of those guys that you described, they didn't forget where they came from.
Exactly. And I'm probably forgetting a few, so I apologize. But those are the main ones.
I appreciate that, Bernie. We'll do this again once the Padres get rolling. We'll pull you on from time to time, get your perspective. You spent enough of nights in those press boxes over the years. You can break down games in your sleep. So we'll look forward to doing this again, and enjoy retirement. Tell the wife I said hi. Tell your two beautiful sons that I adore, known for a long time. Tell them I said hi, and we'll do it again soon.
Will do, Coach. You know my number.
Take care, Bernie.
Yeah, take care.
There you go. Boy, that's some good stuff right there. That's some good historical stuff from Bernie Wilson. Really appreciate him coming on, and we'll do that again. Bernie spent a lot of nights in press boxes in San Diego. 30 years he was in San Diego and over 40 years with the Associated Press. Okay, we're going to get into Fernando because I brought this up about a month ago, talking about how Machado's contract is untradeable. Not that you want to trade any of these guys. I mean, we got a good core. But Manny's contract is untradeable, too much money, and he's getting up there in years. Xander Bogaerts' contract, a lot of money, getting up in years. Anytime you're over 30, man, and you got a lot of years left, not good. Not good. I mean, I don't know how many he's going to perform at 38 or 39 or 40 years of age, and same thing with Bogarts. But Fernando's contract is tradable. And I brought this up about a month ago, and I heard Harold Reynolds the other day. And now other people are saying, well, if the Padres really want to get out from underneath things and, maybe replenish their farm system, maybe they could trade Fernando. Now, here's the deal. And I don't know how you feel about this. I don't want Fernando to go anywhere. Okay, I've got this vision in my mind. That one of these years, Fernando is going to play 150 games, maybe 155. Is it going to happen? I don't know, but I'm praying that it will happen. Now I want to go back, and we're gonna take a look at Fernando's contract. We're going to take a look at how many games he's played each year, and we're going to take a look at what he's making per year. And by the way, from 2021 to 2028. He can block any trade. Okay, and then from 2029 to 2034, he may block trades to 13 clubs annually. Okay, now let's take a look at Fernando's contract. And no doubt it's the easiest to move. I also want to mention two-time All-Star, two-time Silver Slugger, 2023 Gold Glove winner in right field, also the Platinum Glove winner. That meant the best defender in the National League. I mean, that's an incredible honor. Now, Fernando, his contract, he signed in 2021, and it runs through 2034. Now, let me, and it's 14 years, $340 million. Okay, in 2021, he made $1 million. The following year, 2022, $5 million. 2023, $7 million. Last year, 2024, he made $11 million. Now going forward, in 2025 and 2026, he'll make $20 million each. Then in 2027 and 2028, he'll get $25 million. Very affordable for a superstar. And then from 2029 to 2034, he'll get $30 million annually. Now, that's not cheap, but that's still very affordable. When you're looking at some of these other guys out there, they're making more. Okay, and I'm not even getting into Ohtani because Ohtani's in his own universe. Juan Soto got a sweetheart deal. But I'm going to tell you that if Fernando could ever stay healthy, he could beat Juan Soto 38 different ways. He can run, he can throw, he can field, and he can hit with power. Soto probably hit for better average and has a higher on-base percentage. But whatever. I like watching Fernando play. He's my favorite Padre. And there are other guys on the team I like. But Fernando's my guy because he can do it all. I mean, you could go to a ball game on a Tuesday night, and this guy could throw a guy out from the warning track at third base. He could hit a ball off the wall and turn it into a inside the park home run. He could steal second. He could steal third, or he could hit a 450-foot bomb. This guy can do it all. Okay? But I understand it, and it's not like what Harold Reynolds said the other day. He was right. Because I was right when I said it. They've got a contract that they could move if they had to. But I don't think the fan base would allow Fernando Tatis Jr. at this point in time to be traded, especially with everything that's gone on or not gone on during this offseason. I mean, I really don't know. And Bernie brought up a great point. Somebody needs to talk. Somebody needs to hold a press conference first day of spring training, if you want to wait that long. And remember that pitchers and catchers, their first workouts February 12th. The guys will get in there. Guys will start getting in there latter part of next week. But the ownership, somebody from the ownership, Eric Katsenda technically is still the team chairman. They haven't voted on John Seidler yet. But somebody needs to step to the podium to calm the fan base down, calm the media down about what's going on with this franchise. And I'm going to get into Cease and King here in a minute. But as far as Fernando's concerned, I don't know if this ownership is going to own the ball club in 2029, let alone in 2034. I have no idea. But let me share some numbers with you on Fernando. And you'll see what I mean. And again, I keep wanting to roll the dice with him because I do think there's good days ahead. But he's got to start doing it. And last year, well, I'll get into last year in a second. Okay, it's rookie year. Had a great rookie year. Only played in 84 games. He had a WAR of 4.2. And remember, he missed the latter part of that year, his rookie year, because he had that reaction in his back, and they had to set him down. He couldn't play anymore. Then in 2020, he played in 59 out of the 60 games, a 2.8 WAR. That was the COVID year. He played in 59 out of 60 games. And I think he probably could have played in the 60. I think they sat him out one game, if I'm not mistaken. Then 2021, he played 130 games. He had 42 homers, 97 RBIs, and tack on 25 stolen bases. That's a hell of a year. Then, of course, he had the offseason accident. He had the shoulder problem, the wrist surgeries. He had 2 wrist surgeries, a shoulder surgery. And then right when he was coming back, he got nailed for PEDs. And that was in 2022, didn't play one game. And then came back after missing the entire season in 2022. He comes back in 2023 and plays on 141 games. And this is after being out of baseball an entire year. 25 bombs, 78 RBIs, and a 5.5 WAR. That's a hell of an effort. And that's the year he won the Platinum Glove. And that was a position change. Remember, he went from shortstop to right field. I mean, amazing. And then last year, 102 games, and he had the hip problem, a stress reaction in the hip, played in 102, hit 276, 340 on base percentage, 21 bombs, 49 RBIs, a WAR of 2.6. When this guy's on the field, he's exciting, but he's got to stay on the field. I don't know what's going to happen here. I really don't. I think the team at some point in time will be sold. I just see it. I don't think they have the money. I think Peter leveraged this franchise to the hilt. And I think at some point in time, the Seidler brothers are going to get fed up with it. And She'll will get a nice check. She'll go and raise her 3 kids, and the Seidler brothers will go back to LA and move on with their lives. This is probably a real pain to them, to be honest with you. This was not their passion. This was Peter's passion. So we'll see where it goes. But I can see this ball club being sold. I really can. And I don't know how long it's going to take to decide who's actually running the team, who's going to be the team chairman. We'll have to wait and see on that. But I don't want to see Fernando go anywhere. In fact, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't want any of these guys to go anywhere because our window of opportunity is closing very quickly right now. Very quickly. Because after this year, Cease will be gone, King will be gone, Arise will be gone. At some point in time, you're going to have to lock up Jackson Merrill. But let's talk about what the Padres did since Monday. And that's signing a former All-Star catcher, Elias Diaz, who we saw last year, and he wasn't very good. He hadn't played. He got DFA'd by Colorado. Padres sent him down. He played a few games in AAA. They brought him up. He was kind of a throw-in here and there. He hit 190 in 12 games. But I think the pitchers who threw to him really enjoyed throwing to him. And I said, actually, Monday, before they signed him, I go, man, they had to just sign Elias Diaz. It's better than what they got. He's better than Martin Maldonado. Maldonado's a hell of a catcher, though. A great catcher. But he didn't hit. He hit 114 last year with the White Sox. He got DFA'd by the worst team in baseball. 38 years of age, but Martin Maldonado, who knows? Maybe he'll make this ball club. Coming in on a minor league contract. And then you've got Luis Campusano. We talked about him on Monday in the podcast as well. How many more times is Campusano going to get an opportunity? Didn't hit well during the winter, from what I understand. And then you got Brent Sullivan. But getting Elias Diaz, not a bad move. Not a bad move at all. I'm all for that move. But now we got to figure out what the hell they're doing out in the left field. Now, I want to get to Michael King and Dylan Cease, because one of these guys is probably going. And I think if you're going to trade one, you probably would trade Cease. But now you've got Michael King going to arbitration. And I mean, really? Do we really need to go to arbitration with Michael King? Can't we just give him an extra $1.5 million? The guy did a hell of a job last year. How about creating some goodwill? I don't know if he wants to come back here. Maybe even if you gave him $1.5 million, he don't even want to talk to you. He wants to go out and get that really, really big payday, and the Padres probably not going to be able to afford that big payday. I don't know what the Padres can afford right now. Their budget has got to be over $200 million. It has to be, because they're over it now, and they still need some parts to play this year. They need a bench, number one, let alone a left fielder, probably another starting pitcher. They could roll the dice with Matt Waldron and Randy Vasquez. But Michael King is looking for like $1.5 million more than the Padres are willing to offer. So in February, probably going to be going to arbitration. I'm hoping and praying that they don't go to arbitration. That's what I'm hoping for, that they don't go to arbitration, because nothing but ill will when that happens. Okay, now looking at King, had a great year last year. Threw a lot of innings, threw more innings than he never thrown. Did a great job. And there's teams out there that want him. The Mets are interested. I think the Braves have kicked the tires. I think a few other teams have kicked the tires, and a lot of them have kicked the tires on Dylan Cease. I think the Yankees, the Mets, the Braves. I think Boston would be interested in Dylan Cease. And if you're going to trade Dylan Cease, who, from what we understand, is going to make a little under $14 million this coming year, you got to get some help. Even though he's only got 1 year to go, you got to get a 3-for-1, because Dylan Cease could be a difference maker. The guys you're getting in return, I don't know if you're going to get a bullpen arm, a young starting arm, or a couple of minor league arms, and maybe a backup outfield. I don't know what you're going to get. I don't know what teams are telling the Padres right now. But I think the Padres have to wait. I think they may have to wait on this until at least spring training starts. And I'm not sure when that arbitration hearing for Michael King is, because they may end up wanting to trade him. You don't want to trade Cease and then not be happy with what goes on with Michael King. And they wanted to trade him, but they can't because they need a starting pitcher. I mean, we got two of the best guys out there. I mean, King had a 2.95 ERA last year. Fantastic. Did a great job. Throws across his body, a lot of deception. Great stuff. Dylan Cease has got high-end stuff. He just not a lot, he's either really on or off. There's not a lot of middle ground with him. Where King, I think there's a little bit more middle ground. One of those guys is more than likely going to go. They really have to, for a couple of reasons. Number one, you need to create payroll flexibility, and you got to find some guys that can round out your roster. I mean, they got enough arms. And maybe Brian Holman, we talked about him. Maybe Adrian Morejon can get an opportunity as a starter. He'd be limited in how many innings he could go, but I'm not giving up on Matt Waldron. And I thought Randy Vasquez, not that he's going to be the cat's meow in the 5th spot or 4th spot, wherever they decide to put him, but he got better last year. That's how you get better, man. It's not easy pitching in the big leagues, folks. I mean, it's tough. I think Waldron mentally and physically ran out of gas last year. He'll be better for what he went through last year. But as far as King and Cease are concerned, I don't think they have a choice. One of those guys is going. And I'm just hoping if one of those guys go, I'm hoping Luis Arraez doesn't go. Because if you traded Cease and you traded Luis Arraez, that's about $28 million going out the door. And then you bring in young guys that are making the minimum, $800,000, $850,000. You're saving a lot of money. Okay, I just want to make one quick mention on Ha-Seong Kim. You know what? Best of luck to you. Guy played his ass off for the Padres. Rookie year wasn't very good. Went to work, made the adjustments, really put together, I think, a nice start to his major league career here. Last year he wasn't great. The year before, I thought he didn't really play as well as all around, but I thought his second year he was good. Third year he was good. Last year, he really wasn't playing all that great at shortstop when he went down. But Ha-Seong Kim played hard. He gave you everything he had. And you know what? That was a good sign by AJ Preller and his crew coming out of Korea. That was a good sign. And a lot of fans, I know, are probably disappointed, but we figured he wasn't coming back. He outplayed the contract here in San Diego. Got a 2-year deal, $29 million with Tampa Bay. The other thing, he's not going to be healthy. Probably not going to be able to play till May. And hopefully he can come back and play. And he can actually opt out, by the way. So a year from now, he could opt out of his contract. And if the Padres wanted to bring him back, then they could make an offer to him. But that's where that's at. But I got to go back to Fernando. And I was watching Harold Reynolds the other day talk about it, and I'm going, God, it's like he listened to my podcast a month ago. I brought this up a month ago. Now everybody's jumping on it. Okay, FanFest. The only thing I'm going to tell you, go to Padres.com. I know the 10 o'clock get-together is all sold out. I think you can get in there at 1 o'clock. you need to go online. The tickets are free, but you've got to, go through the rigmarole. You just can't walk up there and walk in. You got to have a ticket. You got to print it off, I guess, the internet. So go to Padres.com. They'll give you all the information, when the players are going to speak and all that good stuff. That's going to be interesting. That's going to be very, very interesting, I think, FanFest on Saturday, tomorrow. Be very interesting. Okay, we're going to get out of here. And again, I want your comments, and you can leave your comments at the bottom of our YouTube page. I've got my Facebook at John Kentera, and I've got my X at Coach Kentera 44. Okay, we'll have another podcast that'll be dropping down on Monday morning at 10 a.m. And I want to thank everyone. I hope you have a great weekend. And thanks again to Bernie Wilson for joining us. Good stuff out of Bernie. And we'll talk to you again real soon. And hopefully, by the time I talk to you on Monday, maybe, just maybe, the Padres will have a new left fielder. But you know what? Don't hold your breath. Talk to you Monday, everyone. Bye-bye.